breaking down every game, every day in Major League Baseball. This is the Baseball Betting Show. Here is your host, Greg Peterson.
A warmer for the low. Welcome to lovely Las Vegas for the Baseball Betting Show with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. We've got an excellent podcast for you as we're going to be joined in a few minutes here by Matt Joseph. So you know him better as Major Matt. He does great work with the Prop Queen website and also the Prop Queen podcast. He also does an amazing job over at ESPN Radio in Richmond. He's an excellent college football and college basketball handicapper, and he's been joining me all throughout the season here on this fine baseball podcast. We're going to be talking with him about the dynamic of the World Series, how he's going to be looking to bet it, some of the props that he might be interested in, just if anyone is able to slow down the LA Dodgers, what sort of a shot the Blue Jays do have of being able to win this series, and we'll just dive in on as many different angles as possible for this great series. And then in the final segment, I'll give you guys my initial Game 1 handicap as we touch them all. I know that it's 3 days away, so a little bit TBD with regards to the starters. Would have to think that it's going to be Kevin Gausman against Blake Snell. That's what the handicap is going to be based around, and that'll be subject to change if those are the two guys that are not going in terms of game number 1, but I'll share that with you guys as we've got a few days until the World Series gets started, and I'm going to be with you guys every single day on this podcast, getting you set for it, and we'll be here for you guys throughout. If you do have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you have one of two ways to be able to fire those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at gunit_81. Keep in mind, letters EM, they mean does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline, and the other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. While I did not get in any Twitter/X questions today, everything is powered by EdgeBoost. EdgeBoost is making sure that bettors are able to have access to their funds whenever and wherever. With EdgeBoost, 100% of gambling transactions do get approved, and when you go to edgeboost.bet, make sure you put in that promo code of Greg, G-R-E-G. That'll get you a dollar for dollar match on your first deposit up to $25. Now let's take a look at this great series that we're going to get between the Blue Jays and the Dodgers with our good friend Matt Joseph, aka Major Matt. Follow him on the old Twitter/X at Easy Enough, Major Matt. And Matt, it is always a pleasure, my friend. Thank you so much.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
Matt, it is going to be a wild World Series, and right now I think the biggest question on my mind and the mind of so many others is, do the Blue Jays have any sort of shot to not just steal this series, but perhaps send this to a Game 6 or a Game 7? Because just the way that I've been looking at the playoffs, the Dodgers just feel head and shoulders above everyone else.
I don't think there's a chance for them to win this series. I mean, look, pathway is their pitching is all worldly, and they just do so tremendous. You know, the Gossmans and the Scherzers and all these guys, they just pitch as well as they can, and the bullpen is lights out. And that lineup, look, I think their lineup is going to keep them in games. I think we're going to see some higher scoring games potentially in this series because, you know, Snell is not necessarily 100%, and Glasnow at times. Look, Glasnow's benefited 2 starts so far with the Shadows in Los Angeles. Who knows if he gets that once again? Probably not, considering all the games are really late. But, like, you know, I think that the Blue Jays can make things interesting, but ultimately, I just think that Dodgers pitching and their depth is just so much better than everybody else's.
Yeah, and with the LA Dodgers, they've been able to get a lot of length out of all these guys because you mentioned that Blake Snell might not be 100%. He sure looked 100% against the Milwaukee Brewers. I think part of that is just the Brewers having a little bit of regression from the regular season. But how do you take a look at some of these pitcher props? Because the Blue Jays, when they've had Kevin Gausman out there, they've really let him go. They've had a shorter leash on pretty much everyone else here in the postseason. And for the Dodgers, I mean, they've let their guys go 7, 8+ innings.
Yeah, I mean, I've been making money on the outs overs for the Dodgers pitchers because, you know, while everybody else is so quick to go to their bullpen, the Dodgers know their bullpen's not great. And so they kept these guys out there. And it didn't hurt that they pitched really well, too. It's not like these guys have been bad and they've just stayed out there to eat innings. You know, they've been very good. It goes all the way back to game 1. I mean, Shohei gives up 3 runs early against the Phillies and still manages to go 6 innings in that game. So I've been making more on the outs over, and I think that value is going to kind of disappear because, you know, we're now going to have fresh everything. And I think the books know, like we do, that the starting pitchers are just going to go a little bit deeper here. But the interesting thing will be the contact side of things. Toronto, a very high contact team. If you look at a lot of the starting pitchers they've faced so far, the most strikeouts they had against righties was 4, and the most strikeouts they've had against lefties was 2. Of course, they only faced Fried and Rodon in that first series. And I like to go back to that, you know, series in LA back in August. The Blue Jays faced faced Kershaw, Snell, and Glasnow. Snell had 10 strikeouts in 5 innings in that game, and Glasnow had 8 strikeouts in 5 2/3. And then you go over to the Dodgers side of things. The Dodgers do strike out a little bit more. The problem is you add in a bunch of pitchers who aren't lasting as long as they're supposed to, and a lineup that's getting these guys knocked out early, and so the numbers are kind of underwhelming. Back in that series in August, they saw Scherzer, Bassett, and Lauer, who they're really not going to see very long in this postseason, so you can't really use the Dodgers numbers very much. I'll be interested to see what the numbers are for the Dodgers starting pitchers in terms of strikeouts. If it's lower, I'm going to be looking at some overs. If it's higher, I might be looking at some unders because we know how good of a contact team this Toronto squad is.
And I think that you bring up something so good there with Toronto as Matt Joseph, a.k.a. Major Matt. He's joining me right here on the Baseball Betting Show. And would you say if the Blue Jays have a chance in this series that they need to be playing a lot of overs? Because I've noted this on the podcast a ton. If you look ever since the All-Star break, the Blue Jays have been the number one scoring team in all of baseball. That dates all the way back to the second half of the regular season. And I really think that that's their path to victory because if you look at the tail of the tape between the starting pitchers, other than Kevin Gausman, yeah, you've got Trey Savage, who's an upside guy, but it really doesn't compare. The Dodgers have the leg up there, and you talk about the Dodgers having a weakness in the bullpen. The Blue Jays bullpen leaves a lot to be desired as well.
Yeah, they're relying on a couple of ex-Phillies and Sir Anthony Dominguez and certainly Jeff Hoffman. And Hoffman was tremendous to close out the game in Game 7 for Seattle. But I just feel like the edge here is certainly slightly to the Toronto for the bullpen, slightly to Toronto for the bullpen. But I mean, the starters go to the Dodgers. The lineup goes to the Dodgers. Although if Vlad gets hot and if Springer gets hot and, if Bo Bichette comes in, although who knows how much I want to play Bo Bichette because Jimenez has been really good in that lineup. And so I think that the best case for Toronto is an 8-5 game, a 7-6 game, because that means the Dodgers starters are not going 6 or 7 innings. You can hide a bad bullpen if they only have to go 1 or 2 innings. And if you have Roki Sasaki and we now know he can go 2 innings, then that means you have to get to the 6th inning, maybe cover 1 inning, and then you can go to your closer who's been pretty good for the most part outside that one outing in Milwaukee with the walks. So that's what you have to do is you have to get these starters knocked out early.
Yep, and I do think that is going to be such a big key, and I'm not sure if you've looked into Game 1 at all, but right now we are finding the LA Dodgers as more of like a minus 140, minus 150 favorite, and I'm thinking that the pricing here is Kevin Gausman going up against Blake Snell. I recognize that Gausman had to come in a little bit in Game number 7, but it was only for an inning. You get plenty of time off, so I do think that he should be all good to go for this one. I'd be surprised if he doesn't go. How do you take a look at that Game number 1, though, and do you have someone other than Snell versus Gausman going in this game?
No, I think it's got to be Snell. I mean, maybe you look at who's the best on the road as opposed to home, and who's you look at some of those splits and see, because obviously you're playing games 1 and 2 there. You don't want to have the wrong pitcher going on the road as opposed to home. I mean, I think Shohei could go one of these first 2. I know it'll be less rest than the other guys, but I think you can certainly take advantage of that there. With regards to playing these games, I mean, look, I'm looking right now at one sports book, and I see over 1.5 runs in the first 5 innings for the Dodgers, and I just think if I'm going to get that a lot of this series against those pitchers for Toronto, I think I'm going to take the over. Outside of maybe Trey Savage, who might pitch pretty well in the first time through the order before the Dodgers figure things out, but like these 2 series with these 2 teams, I'm looking at probably 1.5 over for that first 5 innings. I just think LA's got way too many hitters. They're going to have way too much time to kind of go and see all these starting pitchers and study certain things. And, Shohei hasn't even hit that well outside of that one, start he had when he had 3 homers. But there's just so many other guys to worry about in that lineup. I might look at the Blue Jays first 5 over 1.5, maybe not against Snell, maybe against Glasnow. I think they match up well against Glasnow. Maybe if somehow Kershaw start. I mean, I'd love to know who's going to start that Game 4, but we'll see. But I'm certainly looking at these first 5 inning bets, and if they're all 1.5s with these 2 offenses, I'll be interested in certain points in the series.
Yep, that will be an interesting Game number 4 start as well, because that's a little bit TBD at this point, but we know that Yoshinobu Yamamoto has been pretty rock solid as well, and Clayton Kershaw has made 1 appearance here in the postseason, and, well, it's been what we've typically seen out of Clayton Kershaw in the playoffs, not necessarily so great there. And is there anything that you might be taking a look at in terms of series price in this one, or is this going to be a little bit more game-to-game betting for you personally?
Yeah, I think it's going to be game to game. I mean, I might put a small bet on on maybe the Blue Jays plus 1.5 or plus 2.5. I don't know what they'll price the plus 2.5 because I certainly think there's a chance this thing goes 6. I do think we're going to potentially get back to Toronto here. I mean, look, if the number gets high enough, I might be interested in laying $1 or $2 on the Blue Jays to win the series, especially if they're down 1-0 or something like that, just because you never know. There is this small chance that they come back. But like, this is such an easy thing for the Dodgers. I mean, I was glad to get plus 380 on the Dodgers to win the World Series before the postseason began. Like, I just thought they were so much better than everybody else. And I just had to take advantage of that because, as I've said on your podcast and I've said in other places where people have asked me, I think because of the fact that their regular season was so quote unquote mediocre for them, aka they didn't win 120 games and they didn't dominate everybody like we thought they did. I think people kind of forgot how good they were. And then the starting pitching was just so good and everything. So I had to take the Dodgers, even though I don't love taking the favorite for a future like that. So we do have the Dodgers to win the World Series out there. I might at some point, if Toronto shows me something in game 1 that maybe this will go longer, I might put something small on plus 2.5 or maybe even them to win the series, even though I know it's probably, putting money that I'm never going to see back.
Yep, it certainly has been a case where the Dodgers have been going through the playoffs like a hot knife through butter, and for the Toronto Blue Jays, they were able to find a way against the Seattle Mariners, so we've got ourselves a lot of fun here for the World Series. And Matt, I know you're going to do a great job of breaking down these games, but you, much like myself, getting set for college basketball, which is back in less than 2 weeks. You're doing a great job on the college football front. You always do an incredible job taking a look at all these props and so much more, so let the good people at home know it's all on tap for you and how people are able to follow along on social media and other platforms.
Yeah, at Major Matt on Twitter. Certainly, I post all my plays. They're tracked on the Action Network app, so certainly there's no questions to my record or anything like that. And I play a lot more player props, and I know that you do not. So certainly, I'm here to help. If somebody wants to ask something or they want to run a prop by me, and I'll give them my thoughts. I'm on Prop Queen podcasts on Mondays and Fridays, so you can see me on there. But we all have the same goal. We all want to beat the books, and soon it's going to be beating the books in college basketball as well.
Absolutely. That is going to be absolutely tremendous. Myself and Matt absolutely love college basketball. That's how you get the name Mid-Major Matt, by the way. And I know that he's geared up for that. We're both geared up for what is going to be an incredible World Series. And Matt has been joining me on this podcast all season long and always lends amazing insight. So big thanks to Matt for joining me on the Baseball Betting Show, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. And coming next, recognize that it's still a few days away, but want to get you guys a little bit of something to fill the time before we get game number 1. So I've got my initial handicap, assuming that we get Kevin Gausman versus Blake Snell for game number 1 as we touch them all.
Breaking down every game, every day in Major League Baseball. This is the Baseball Betting Show. Here is your host, Greg Peterson.
And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for the Baseball Betting Show with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. Always great to be joined by Matt Josephs, aka Mid-Major Matt. He does such an excellent job taking a look at this great game that we all know and love of baseball. Every single time he joins me, he lends such great insights. He did so once again today, so big thanks to Matt for joining me in the last segment. Now it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis on game 1 of the World Series as we touch them all.
If a game is listed on the betting board, Greg has a side and a total on it, so it is time to touch them all.
Do note that as per usual, any changes that are made to these plays will be listed up on my Twitter/X feed at G._D1. Made sure to say it at the top of the show, and I will say it once again here. This is assuming that we get Kevin Gausman and Blake Snell as the starters here in game number 1, subject to change if these are not the guys that are starting in game number 1, but we've got a few days until this World Series gets kicked off, so figured I would dive into it as I've already got this handicap. This is 921, 922 with the Dodgers being the road team in Toronto, and with the Blue Jays, you're finding them anywhere between plus 124 to a plus 132. Meanwhile, minus 144 to a minus 155, that number on the Dodgers. The total on this game is 7.5. The under is minus 120, and the over is even, and I'm going to take a shot here on the Blue Jays as long as we do get Kevin Gausman. I did place the Blue Jays as a plus 120 +128 underdog. For Kevin Gausman, he's got a 2 ERA here in the postseason. If you look regular season and postseason, ERA is hovering more in the neighborhood about like a 340 to a 345. Didn't do the exact math quite yet, but it's in that neighborhood. Now, we have seen a little bit of a fall off with regards to his strikeout stuff here in the postseason, but still, he's been able to do a nice job in terms of not hurting himself during the regular season. He's only given up about 2.2 walks per 9 innings. Has been giving up a few more walks here in the postseason, and for Kevin Gausman, he did have to come on in relief as well in that Game 7 win against the Seattle Mariners, but he only threw 1 inning. He did give up the 3 walks, and that's why his walks numbers here in the postseason are jacked up a little bit more, but I think that he should be good to go here. And then if you do get Blake Snell, this guy has just been absolutely filthy. Should have been given a chance to be able to pitch a complete game in that series against the Milwaukee Brewers. He's made 3 starts here in the playoffs. He's given up 2 runs across 21 innings with 6 hits. He's getting 12 strikeouts per 9 innings here in the playoffs, and he's given up more than 3 earned runs just once between the regular season and the postseason. And I mean, for Blake Snell, obviously it's a little bit of smaller sample size because he was banged up throughout much of the regular season, but this guy has been rock solid. And with the LA Dodgers, this is a very much revamped bullpen. No longer are you relying upon the likes of Tanner Scott, Kirby Yates. Jack Dreyer has seen a few appearances, but I mean, Emmett Sheehan has been coming out of the bullpen. You've been able to have Roki Sasaki be a really good closer for this team. They've been able to do a nice job mixing and matching, and Anthony Banda has been pretty solid in this bullpen as well for the Dodgers. They've been pretty solid here in terms of their offense. They didn't necessarily get it going a ton against the Milwaukee Brewers, but they had a nice series against the Cincinnati Reds. Shohei Ohtani has 5 home runs here in the postseason. The 3 home run game against the Milwaukee Brewers, absolutely insane. And Teoscar Hernandez, 4 home runs here in the playoffs. Now, if you look between the regular season and the postseason, Teoscar Hernandez, his on-base percentage is only right around about a 300, and we have seen Andy Paz have a little bit of a rough postseason here, but he should be able to get it going, in my opinion, as well. Freddie Freeman, he's always rock solid here in the playoffs. We remember what he was able to do last season and here in the playoffs. And if you really look ever since the All-Star break, Mookie Betts, who got off to a rough start to this season, he's been able to do a much better job here in the playoffs, about a 370 on base. And then you look at the flip side for the Toronto Blue Jays, it's just all about Vlad. Vlad Guerrero Jr. has been incredible with 6 home runs here in the playoffs after he had just 23 during the regular season. You expect a little bit more power out of Vlad, but he has been able to really turn it on. George Springer with that massive home run in game number 7. He's been, between the regular season and the playoffs, providing about a 370 on base, led the team in home runs during the regular season. And Dalton Varsho has been able to get on base a little bit more here in the postseason. During the regular season, he was only hitting about a 230 or so. Here in the playoffs, he's been hitting more like a 270, and between the regular season and the postseason, about 1 home run every 12 or so at bats. Now, for the Blue Jays, the big weakness for this team is the bullpen, but you still have guys that have been pretty rock solid throughout the year. Braden Fisher, Brandon Little, Seranthony Dominguez, these are all guys that had a sub 350 ERA during the regular season. Jeff Hoffman had a very, very shaky regular season, but he's been much better here in the postseason. He was able to close out in game number 7, so do have to give him a little bit of a tip of the cap there. And I do think that when it's all said and done, you are going to have the Blue Jays have a bit of value on them. I really love the way that Kevin Gausman has been rolling, and the Dodgers, they played every one of their games to the under against the Milwaukee Brewers, and I do think that things start off with a little bit of an under here, as I do think that you've got a good pitching matchup. So I did set my total at 7.3 here at the 7.5. I'm going to be in on the under, and as long as this price holds, I set the Blue Jays as a plus 128 underdog, so pretty much plus 130 or better. Going to be looking at the Blue Jays on the money line, and that'll wrap things up for the Wednesday edition of the Baseball Betting Show, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. A big thanks to Matt Josephs, aka Mid-Major Matt. He joined me in the last segment. If you do like hearing from this fine podcast, Baseball Betting Show, you're able to subscribe wherever your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you have one of 2 ways to be able to fire those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at gunit_81. Keep in mind, letters EM, they mean does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. And the other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review, and I'm going to be with you guys every single day here until a World Series title is crowned. Might take a day off when we do have one of those travel days and we just don't have a day of games, but I'm going to try to keep this podcast rolling every single day until we hit the offseason, and then once we hit the offseason, it's full-bore college basketball for those of you guys that like that. So I appreciate you joining me today, and I'll be back with you once again tomorrow. Thank you.